The last train to Cars Part 3. For several seconds, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even process what I was looking at. The photograph lay in my trembling hands. There was no mistake. The man in the picture was me, the same red jacket, the same bag, the same camera hanging from my neck. Even the scratch on the left lens cap was visible. The photograph had been taken from a hillside overlooking the railway. Yet I had never stood there, at least not that I remembered. A date was written on the bed, December 14, 2019. 3 days in the future, I dropped the photograph. My pulse hammered in my ears. The room suddenly felt smaller. The walls seemed closer. Every photograph around me showed the same train, the same impossible locomotive. Decade passed in those pictures. People aged, buildings changed, landscapes transformed, but the train remained exactly the same. Like it existed outside time, and now somehow I was part of the collection. I left the station immediately. I didn't run, but I wanted to. Every instinct screamed at me to get away. The sky had darkened considerably. Snow cloud rolled over the mountains. Another storm was approaching. As I hurried along the tracks, I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting someone to emerge from the abandoned station. Nobody did. Yet the feeling of being watched remained, persistent, unshakable. The sensation followed me all the way back to the maintenance shed. That night, I locked the door. Then I pushed a heavy cabin against it. I was not taking chances anymore. The whistle came at 11:48 p.m. Exactly, not approximately, exactly. The sound jolted me awake. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, pretending it was not there. But curiosity can be stronger than fear, especially when fear has already taken hold. I looked through a crack in the boarded window. The train was already approaching. Its headlights cut through the darkness. Snow swirled around it like ghost. The locomotive moved silently at first. Then came the familiar metallic rhythm, the grinding of wheels, the distant hum of machinery. Everything sounded real, too real. The train drew closer. And this time I noticed something different. One carriage stood out from the others. It was darker, older. The windows appeared black, no light inside, no visible passenger, just darkness. The 13th carriage. I don't know why I thought that. But the moment I saw it, I knew that was the missing carriage. That one never recorded after the derailment. The one absent from official records. The one that should not exist. As the train passed, something moved inside that dark carriage. A shape, then another. Human silhouettes. Standing motionless behind the glass, watching, waiting. The train continued rolling past, carriage after carriage disappearing into storm. Then, for the briefest moment, the dark carriage aligned perfectly with my window. A figure stepped forward inside. A man, tall, thin, wearing an old railway conductor's uniform. His face remained hidden in shadow, but I could see one thing clearly. He was smiling, and he was looking directly at me. The train vanished seconds later, yet long after it disappeared, I remained frozen beside the window, because just before the carriage passed out of the side, the conductor had raised one hand and pointed toward the door of my shed. Three knocks came minutes later, slow, measured, deliberate. The sound echoed through the building. My blood turned cold. Nobody should have been there. No roads, no villages, no travelers. Just miles of snow covered wilderness. The knocking come again. Three solo taps. I remained silent. The room felt impossibly still. Then a voice spoke from outside, a man's voice, calm, polite. Ticket, please. Every muscle in my body tightened. The voice sounded close, just beyond the door. I didn't respond. Several seconds passed. Then the voice spoke again. Exactly the same tone, exactly the same words. Ticket, please. Something about the repetition felt wrong, mechanical, practiced, as if the speaker only knew a few phrases. I stayed perfectly still. Minute passed. No further sound. Eventually, exhaustion overtook fear. At some point near dawn, I fall asleep. I woke to silence. The storm had ended. Sunlight reflected brilliantly off Krishna. For a brief moment, everything felt normal again. Then I noticed the footprints. They surrounded the shed, hundreds of them. Not one set, hundreds. The snow around the building looked trampled, as though dozens of people had stood outside during the night. I stepped outside carefully. The footprints circled the structure repeatedly. Some approached the windows, others stopped near the walls. One trail led directly to the door, then ended. No return footprints, no continuation, just an ending. As though someone had walked to the door and simply ceased to exist. That afternoon, I drove back in two cars. I needed answer. The local railway archive occupied part of an aging government building near the station. Most records had been digitalized years earlier. The archivist seemed surprised by my questions, especially when I mentioned the derailment. He disappeared into a back room and returned carrying a thin folder. Not much survived, he said. Many documents were lost. I opened the folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, investigation reports, victim list, photographs. One article immediately caught my attention, a witness statement. According to the report, several survivors described an unidentified railway employee walking through the train shortly before the accident. The man reportedly asked passengers a strange question, the same question repeatedly, passengers after passengers, carriage after carriage. The article quoted one witness directly. He kept asking us to look out the windows. My heart nearly stopped. The notebook, the sentence from the suitcase, the same word, the same man. The archivist noticed my reactions. You have heard the story? I shook my head. The old man lowered his voice. People around here still talk about him. Who? The conductor. I stared at him. The train didn't have a conductor. It did, he nodded slowly. But according to records, the conductor died 3 months before the accident. Silence filled the room. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked the question I had been avoiding. What happened to the missing carriage? The archivist looked uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. There was not one. Officially? Officially. The distinction was not lost on me. What do you mean? He hesitated, then leaned closer. Some recovery workers claimed they counted 13 carriages after the crash. I felt my stomach tighten. The records only list 12, correct? Then where did the extra carriage come from? The old man looked away. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he whispered, that is the problem. He met my eyes. No one could ever find it again. That evening I returned to the railway, not because I wanted to, because I needed to know. The photographs from the station still haunted me. The date, the future date, December 14, tomorrow. Whatever happened next, I knew it would happen soon. As darkness settled across the mountains, I reached the location shown in the photograph. The same hillside, the same angle, the same view overlooking the tracks. I stood exactly where the future's version of myself had stood. Snow drifted quietly around me. The valley below was empty, silent, waiting. Then, far in the distance, a whistle echoed through the night. This time it sounded different, closer, hungrier. And for the first time since arriving in cars, I realized something terrifying. The train was not following the tracks anymore, it was following me. The final part would reveal what happened on December 14th, the truth about the 13th carriage.